But is this award justified? On the line now, Lord Owen, who, as David Owen, served as Foreign Secretary between 1977 and 79, and the Conservative MP David Davis, who was Europe Minister at the Foreign Office between 1994 and 1997. Good afternoon to you both. Lord Owen, first of all, what do you make of this announcement?
Well, I think that it is deserved. I mean, only the most churlish of attitudes to Europe would deny that the Europe Coal and Steel Community, which was the first institution, did bind Germany and France together. It bound their big industries, and I think it helped, along, of course, with NATO, then dealing with the confrontation with the Soviet Union, to build a new Europe and build much closer relationships between France and Germany. Also, since then, we've done a good deal, around the world. I mean, I was thinking back to Africa in 1978, Namibia. It wasn't strictly speaking the European community, but it was Germany, France, and Britain with United States and Canada in a contact group. And we used to coordinate in what was then called political cooperation in Europe. And it was very helpful to have the input of other countries in formulating that policy. Then the same happened in the Balkans, where Europe has sat it out through a very difficult time, both in Bosnia-Herzegovina and in Kosovo.
David Davis, are you feeling in a churlish mood, or are you willing to welcome this?
David may think me churlish, but I do think this actually brings into question the whole decision-making mechanism for the Peace Prize. I mean, after Obama, as you commented in your intro, got the award only a few months into office and has spent every Thursday morning since then picking targets for the drone assassination program. I think they should have been a bit more careful. Of course, the EU has made a contribution. There's no doubt about that. I don't think anybody should argue that. And no doubt at all that its original intention, Monnet and Schumann's intention, was to try to prevent the hideous tragedies of the previous century. But the raw truth is, I mean, the biggest single effect on stopping militarism in Germany has been Germany itself. The country self-pacified. It turned its back on its history and with the help of British lawyers largely created a constitution that made foreign wars impossible and made domestic demagogues impossible too.
So you think the committee is confusing and conflating different things?
I do, and I think that, as David sort of intimated, that NATO had as big a part, if not not as big a part, a much greater part, frankly, in bringing together Europe. And indeed, actually, ironically, one of the points in the citation is about the bringing of the old Soviet Eastern European countries in. Well, NATO did a big part of that. It was much faster off the mark in many ways than the European Union was. I was involved in that.
David Owen, might that not have been a more appropriate organisation to make the award to?
Well, I doubt they will, but I actually agree. I think NATO has been a source of peace, and the deterrent effect of NATO all through the Cold War was crucial. So I have no question of NATO's contribution, but because it's a military alliance, I suspect they won't reward it, but I think it ought to be considered. I mean, UNHCR is another agency of the UN, WHO. All of these have made their contribution.
What about the European
Union? Well, it's rather helpful. I mean, I think there's no doubt Europe's in a frightful mess. I mean, David and I agree that Eurozone is a disaster, and both of us predicted it for many years in advance, and thank goodness we're not a member of it. But nevertheless, given that it's there, we have to try and help them overcome the problems of the Eurozone, and probably it will mean a far greater degree of integration between the Eurozone countries. And Britain, to be fair to the present government, is not standing in their way. That's the first time you could say for 400 years that the UK has agreed to a coming together of continental European countries.
But there is a real problem with timing, David. I mean, the two reasons for the problem with timing. Firstly, in terms of its activity on the foreign affairs front, where the Nobel Committee referred to Eastern Europe, they didn't refer to Yugoslavia. And I have to say that I don't think the European Union's foreign policy in Yugoslavia was remotely helpful in its early years. So there's that. But secondarily, the current EU grew out of trying to prevent the consequences of the 1930s. What we're seeing in Madrid and Athens today is the same sort of social devastation, economic disaster, and largely, as we will both agree, arises out of the Eurozone. Now, we want to see that fixed, but this is not the time for the Nobel Peace Prize committee to make this award, because it will actually be seen to be foolish in a couple of years if we're not very careful, if this goes wrong.
And having made this award, David Owen, how should the EU respond to it? Because there's a temptation, presumably, for a lot of mutual backslapping.
Yes, well, that's the trouble with Europe. It's full of presentism, and they're all the time also trying to pretend that they've got great power, pretend they're a government. They're not a government, they're a grouping of member states. Now, there may be a time when some will want to go off and group together so strongly that it virtually is a country called Europe. Britain won't be part of that, I don't think. But I don't think we need to be, as I say, too critical. The Peace Committee often use the award as an encouragement as much as a reward, and to some extent it's encouragement. I mean, frankly, on peace, Europe was very recently split over Libya. Germany and Poland weren't ready to come in. France and Britain bore the brunt of it with the United States, and of course that's always reality. Most of our contributions on peace are done in the Security Council, where fortunately France and Britain are permanent members.
David Owen and David Davis, thank you both very much. Well, let's get a perspective from